It's Jen Suzuki, and I'm in the industry. I meet some of the greatest leaders out there, dealer execs, dealers, GMs, and I'm bringing them in the studio to talk to me about what's making their business pop, what's accelerating their growth. I'm sharing my own personal strategies for your sales teams, so I'm ready to get after it. Are you? Welcome back, listeners. I've got Jade Terreberry with us today. She's the Senior Director of Strategic Development at Cox Automotive Group. And I have seen her on LinkedIn and all over the place doing like a full-blown world tour. She is like a musician. And she just, they have these great data and analytic studies that they do. And I thought, gotta invite Jade on. Maybe she'll share some of this with us and see how it will impact our store's progress. Welcome, Jade.
Thanks, Jen. I'm so glad to be here. And that data is near and dear to my heart. And the roadshow is a great opportunity to share it with the world. But yeah, glad to be here. And let's start measuring. I know you do a great job telling your dealers and your clients and helping them really get to the meat of how to make database decisions for their business. So thrilled to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, so I believe that the study is the 14th annual. Okay, not the first, the 14th. They are pros at this thing. It's a car buyer journey study, and a lot of the discoveries that Jade will pinpoint with us is really designed to help us with being aware of the car buying process, the journey, the way the customers experience it, and this is really aimed at our leadership teams and our sales teams so that we can really hear these things and be able to see how it applies to our business and constantly evolve and improve and stay relevant. Hello. But tell us more about that study. What are we gonna see, and what are you gonna unpack on here? What kind of findings you got?
Yeah, so this is a really exciting one for dealers because there are some things we're going to talk about today that just give us awesome confidence. Like the dealership world is here to stay. Consumers, even though they want this evolved and sophisticated experience, they are leaning on dealerships to do that. They're going to continue to grow the size of the fleets in their garages of vehicles that they own and that they buy from a dealership location. And for just some of the quick details on the background of the study, like you said, 14 years that we have done it. It is surely our most highly anticipated annual release from Cox Automotive. But we actually take 3,000 consumers that actually purchased vehicles in the previous year. And we ask a ton of questions around how they shopped, what they liked, what they didn't like. And so it's across new and used vehicles. It's all different age ranges. It's all different price ranges. And so we make sure that we really cover the full gamut of all of the things that consumers are wanting and expecting and seeing, what they like, what they don't. And that way we can translate that into real actionable things that our dealer body, your dealer body, can take to make sure that they're meeting the consumers where they are. Because we know consumers have more information at their fingertips than they've ever had before. They are educated when they come into your store or when they inquire with you online, and they expect you to have the answers and to give them that sophisticated experience that they're looking for. So I'm thrilled to be talking to you about it today.
Thank you for that background on this study. It's a lot of people, it's a lot of buyers, and I'm actually super curious to hear the things that you were surprised at the most. Being, in seeing that being around the study for so long, what surprised you?
Well, the biggest takeaway for me is that every communication point with every consumer matters now more than it ever has before. I've heard you talk to dealerships about the days of first click or last click attribution being a thing of the past, but the results of the study absolutely solidified to us that consumers, when they start their purchase journey, they're reaching out and they cast a pretty broad net, and they're making most of those connections via some kind of virtual, either known or anonymous touch point with a dealership location or an OEM brand. And they're doing the same thing on the ownership side. I know we may have a chance to talk about fixed in a little bit, but what that means is as they are getting further down the funnel, they are not only judging the dealers and the people that they are communicating with based on the vehicle and the price, they're basing it on the relevance and the content and the timeliness. And if you're building trust and if you're responding the way that they want you to respond. And so, I think it's just more important than ever before what we saw in the data that tells us every touch point matters, because as they get lower and lower in the funnel, they
Mhm.
are more likely to throw you out the window for something like not saying the right thing back when they ask why they have 3 different trade valuations. The other big one, huge stat that we are just, I personally was shocked by.
Mhm.
The average consumer is walking into a dealership location now with almost 3 instant cash offers or
Mhm.
real world valuation, cash in their pocket, values for their trade in. And they have no idea why the average spread on those is $2,000. And so,
Mhm.
again, that just tells you like the days of being able to get them in the store, set that appointment, that's not what they expect anymore. If you take that extra step to educate them and to give them data and to appreciate the research that they've already done and help them
Mhm.
understand how to process it, to build out the purchase structure that they want, that's who they're going to do business with. The actual words that came out of the study, they want a sophisticated buyer experience.
What does that mean?
Isn't that a great question? I think it means what we just said. It's no longer about having the right car and the right price. It's the right car, the right price, the right communication, the right relevant content,
Mhm.
even on your virtual experience, your virtual lot, your dealership website, anywhere in internet world where they have an opportunity to interact with your brand or your inventory.
Mhm.
It's taking them one step further down the funnel. They're not having to re-enter information. They do not like that. We all know we don't like to do it.
Hate
But this
that.
is the real world. They will write off a dealership that has the right car and the right price for somebody else that is giving them that relevant experience that they want to have, and that is not making them recreate steps even when they show up at the store, and giving them the opportunity in some cases to move back online. They want to come see it, touch it, feel it,
Mhm.
but then they want to still go through that self-guided research. So that also tells us that even though the inflection point of e-commerce adoption that many
Mhm.
in the industry thought was inevitable post
Mhm.
COVID, we see consumers really moving back. Like they still want this assisted, friendly dealership experience when they get into the lower parts of that funnel, but you still have to give them the autonomy to make their own decision based on research and to self-guide at their own pace. Doesn't mean you
Mm.
don't need the basics of overcoming objections and closing a deal in a car dealership, because a lot
Mhm.
of that was lost through how easy the last couple of years have been. We've got to get our
Mhm.
staff back doing all of those things they should be doing. But
Mm.
every follow-up matters, and we have to be sure that we're meeting the consumer where they are every single time.
So, as you mentioned, the touch points, which could equate to phone call process, texting,
Mhm.
your email communications, your videos, your listings, your descriptions, your pricing. Is that what you mean?
That's what we mean. We even mean how long they're waiting. How many times does the phone ring? Do they get a virtual assistant? Does it get them to the right place? Do
Mm.
you have chat and text enabled? Like there are a
Mhm.
lot of consumers that are telling us they want to make those first couple of touch points anonymously. Doesn't
Mhm.
mean that they're not just as serious. They're going to buy a car. They're not out there doing all of this work for fun. Their intentions are to purchase from somebody, but they are looking for the dealership and the organization. And another big one from the store, the study,
Mhm.
they're going further than they have ever gone before from a distance perspective to get not only the car and the price but the experience that they want. We what used to be 20 to 50 miles is now 60 to 161 miles is kind of
Say
that
what?
average sweet spot. Isn't that crazy? But you think about that, and you think about our dealers that say,
Mhm.
hey, I'm not quite ready to do distance retailing. You're playing in that world whether
Mm.
you think you are or not, because your
Open the door.
competition sure is reaching into your own backyard, and your customers sure are reaching out of your own backyard. So,
Mm.
those are the kinds of things that we see from the study. Our dealers have to focus on taking small incremental steps to master these things that create a sophisticated consumer experience, distance
Okay.
and relevant content.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm very surprised about the distance, particularly at this moment. Now, last year, I went the distance for my car. I went at least 6 states to get my car. I'm one of those people.
Yep.
Um, This year, it feels very different. At this moment that we're in right now, this first quarter, dealerships got a lot of inventory. They have duplicate vehicles. Customers that I hear that I'm talking to, they are shopping. They are talking to multiple dealers and they have similar, if not the exact car. And so they're similarly priced and it's a dog eat dog world again. It's a street fight.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I am feeling that they may not be as willing to travel, or this might start to tick down because there's more cars in inventory. Do you see that as maybe a factor, or is it that just people are not getting the experience they wanted in their backyard and they're like willing to now travel 120 miles to get the experience? What do you think it is?
So let me say this looks very different, new versus used.
Ah,
We have a lot of aging inventory problems that we haven't seen in years starting
true.
to happen. Those
Sitting.
duplication of colors and trim packages.
Hmm.
That's something when we just. It's been a long time since we've
Yeah.
had to work through that, and so you're absolutely right that that is out there. However, on the used car side, we are seeing as much of a shortage and a supply and demand imbalance. And we're just getting ready to embark on the shortage caused by less off lease vehicles. So we're
Hmm.
going to have
Hmm.
millions less off lease used vehicles coming into the marketplace starting the back half of this year, through the next few years. Still downfall, or fallout from the pandemic. And so I think while new cars must be competitive, but yes, you have what you need in your own backyard. You have to be back in the world where you have those lost leaders out there and you have absolute experts working your phones and your email leads and your
Hmm.
chats and pushing those consumers through the funnel and not missing a beat on response time or relevant content. But when it comes to used, also making sure for both that you have the checkout channel and the communication channels. That's the sophisticated experience part, because they will travel outside of their market. And new is a funny thing when you think about, if we say new, every dealership now has a couple of most everything. That's
Hmm.
absolutely accurate.
Hmm.
But because they're casting that wide net, and like you said,
Hmm.
they are negotiating, they are
Hmm.
researching, they're getting those trade values, and they will still go the distance, even in today's environment, for that person who is going to talk them through and help them understand those variances in trade value, or is
Hmm.
going to go just a little bit further on price or experience. And we know, if you lose that kind of lifetime value of the consumer, to bring them back into your service drive, all of those things matter. And
Hmm.
this is an important one, but don't by any means mistake aged inventory sitting on a lot for the kind of, there isn't a supply and demand imbalance, because there is, and we're going to continue to see it. But consumers are going to require that the dealership professionalism and trust and relationship that they build
Okay.
and all of those trust points matches their expectations.
Yeah. And do you feel that we're getting better at this, or are there specific things that you've isolated during maybe that study that could tell us what do we need to do differently?
Yeah. So there's a very wide spectrum of where dealers fall on the range of having adjusted to what consumers want today. And you may have heard me mention fierce measurement. I've
Mhm.
talked about that a lot over the last few months, and that is an acronym for the things that I think are really important for a dealership to be focused on now. And so I'm just going to hit each one of those, because
Okay.
those are the takeaways.
Oh, I love
One
this.
is
And the acronym is fierce.
fierce. You
We
got
will
it.
never
Fierce
forget this.
measurement. Yes, you're going to love this. But number one is future focus. Like
Okay.
we have some dealers that just forget everything we're doing today has to be taking one baby step for the future. And the consumers are not going to ever go back to how it was
No.
before, without question. So making sure again that virtual lot is set up for success, and
Okay.
recognizing you've got to let them take as many steps as they want to take in that virtual experience to start moving towards the future. So future focus. Number two is incrementality. Um, Incrementality means market share. Do you know if you are winning or losing market share every single month, month over month? It is not ever static. And so, that is one of those key pieces of measurement. And Also, that outside of market, that distance retailing thing, that's one of those places where you're going to gain incrementality. E-commerce, one of those areas where consumers, if you give them that extra checkout channel, the self-guided experience, incrementality comes from taking those future focused steps. Number three is efficiency, and that
Mhm.
can be through a combination of expense management, but a lot of that efficiency comes with measurable processes.
Okay.
And those were things that were lost through the pandemic because it was so easy to sell a car.
Definitely.
Somebody walked into the dealership, they already knew and they were ready to pay over asking price in some cases because they needed a vehicle, they needed it now, and they were really hard to get. Those days are gone. So
Yes.
efficiency and process matters more than ever before.
Mhm.
Um, I'm going to save the last ones for the back half because I know you have a lot of questions.
It's
Let's go
okay.
ahead and dive into your next question, and then we'll talk about the rest.
Okay. During this study, you probably had some takeaways. You probably had some areas where customer satisfaction was at risk, or even their sales process was at risk. You keep mentioning like efficiency and be sure that if they're in a digital environment, that you've given them the tools to move it forward as far as they want to. Which in my mind, I keep equating to, does she mean like a digital retailing tool, that should be more front and center in the equation, or at least accessible, or at least spoken about, in the sales process? Is
Sure.
that what you meant? And is that something that correlates to the study?
Yes. So, what we mean is that all consumers have a way now that they pretty much know they want to shop. They
Mhm.
either want to take this self guided experience. We also know that all of them, almost all of them, they are price and budget shopping. So
Mhm.
you've got to give them the opportunity to search by price and budget. They're
I
coming
see.
in educated, they know what they're looking for, and they want those tools to be available on your site within your experience. But we also see that they expect when somebody from your dealership has the opportunity to now connect with them, so
Uh-huh.
that whether that's known or anonymous, that they know all of the steps that they've already taken online. So the days of, a BDC agent gets a text or chat on their phone at 10 o'clock at night and they call and say, hey, what time can you be here tomorrow?
Mhm.
10:15 or 11:45 better for
Yeah.
you. Those days don't work anymore. The consumer expects that you say, hey, I know you're inquiring on X.
Mhm.
And we see that you put a trade value in it. Tell us a little more. What's your payoff? If they've already put those things into your systems, your tools, they expect that somebody's going to know that. And
Pick
that's
back
that
up where they
relevant
left
content.
off.
Pick it. That's exactly right. And when they transition into the store, you better have tools that your
We're
teams
not
have
starting over.
adopted that allow that information to pass seamlessly so that they're not doing it all over again because that really frustrates them.
Okay. Well, this is, in my opinion, a major breakdown, because a lot of times they'll start online, and then when they come in, if it wasn't communicated effectively between the representative that was assisting the customer and the new person now assisting the customer, well, then they're going to start all over. They didn't look in the CRM, they didn't look at the notes. And so I think that this is the target area that you're
It
saying is the correction. This is the
is.
solution. We need to
Yep.
tighten up this process and be aware. Because a lot of times when people start more of these initiatives on life, as you mentioned, self-guided, I like that. They're popping in their trade value.
They're in
They're
control. Yeah.
Yeah, they're looking at their payments. Some doing a hard pull on their credit. Okay, so this becomes what a lot of people would call an internet lead. For me, I see it differently. But it pulls into the same mix as a lot of third-party leads, website leads, and stuff like this. So they work them all the same way. And in my opinion, and you tell me if I'm wrong too, even in relation to the study, I feel like we need a different sales process for that. The customer's
Yes.
telling you, I'm not a third party lead. I'm
Yeah.
in market low
That's
funnel
right.
in a
Yeah.
lot of cases. And they're not always, they just are curious. They want to get this information. But if we don't reference it when we do speak to them, then it's sort of like you're starting all over and they feel like, oh, I'm wasting my time.
Yes. Well, for years, I 5, 10 years ago,
Mhm.
running sales analytics for Auto Trader and Kelly Blue Book, I always said the most direct indicator of what's getting ready to happen on your physical lot is what just happened on your virtual lot. You
Yeah.
take that now and put that on steroids.
Yeah.
The and what many of our dealers are trying to do, even a lot of our OEMs are trying to do it. They're trying to take all of these new things, new
Mhm.
tools, new technologies, and still duplicate that same old experience. And the consumer is saying, no, that's the sophisticated experience that they want. It's like, if
Right.
I want to do 90% of the stuff that I want to do and that I need to do before
Mhm.
I come in and still get my see it, touch it, feel it, test drive and connect with you and know you and feel good about buying the car from you and your location. But when I get to your store, they're actually comfortable with going back to like 85, 86%. They'd love to walk in after they've done 90% online and start at 91 when they get to your store. But if they walk in that door and you take them back to step
Zero.
one, and you try to do the meet
That's a
and greet and the
miss.
investigation and put them on the right car and do it's over.
Mhm.
They will find somebody and they'll drive. They'll go farther away to get that experience that they want. But
Great
that's what they
point.
mean. They want it to. They know it's nonlinear and they want it to be seamless all the way to the end at the pace in which they want to go.
Okay, understood. And I am guessing that you're seeing the momentum building through this study that customers want to do more, maybe online. And that even when they contact you, it doesn't mean that they're ready. It means that it's part of the journey. Stop
Mhm.
pressing them so hard, figure out where they've been, and maybe have that conversation, determine where they're at, move it forward to what the next phase would be in the sales process.
Yeah, so the follow-up piece is still critical. But,
Mm,
I think the days of drip campaigns that
mhm.
are completely irrelevant to where they are in their journey, people are hitting the unsubscribe button probably faster than they ever have before. And so, I think the real world, real connection, and
Yeah.
smart tools that your
Mhm.
staff and teams have adopted and are held accountable to using, that's part of that process. Measuring how fast are you getting real two-way communication, and when you get it, are you turning off all of those canned things that aren't relevant? Like that is it's a really big piece and it's a problem and it makes consumers mad.
Well, I said all the time, templates are old school. What are you people doing? Living in the 80s? I mean, nobody likes that stuff. It definitely turns away buyers, and I can validate that.
Mhm.
We live in a world where people want human connection,
Yeah.
and in a world now where AI is emerging, I think we have to be very careful here. I'm a huge advocate of AI, leveraging it in
Yeah.
the sales process, but you got to
Mhm.
do it in a way that, yeah, works for the customer experience and isn't like a copy and paste, put it in a template, and I didn't make any mods to it, and now it looks like a robo.
Mhm.
Because I think that's what you're saying, is that a lot of times
Mhm.
we have these auto sales processes set up, and these emails are going out, and it's not targeted, it's not personalized enough, it's just
Yeah.
generic, and it may not hit the spot. It might not even make sense, and in fact, turning the system off altogether might be your best bet, and focusing more on a personalized
That's
experience,
right.
which I think what you're saying correlates to the sophisticated buying process that they,
Yeah.
yeah, one of the touch points.
It is. It does. It means be professional, know what I've already done, help me through
Mhm.
the process. Don't push me through the process, but help
Personalized
me. That's right. Help
experiences.
me through the process at my pace.
Mhm, mhm. That's hard for people, girl.
It is, it
Mhm,
is. Well, and it sounds like it's contradictory to what
mhm,
I said a few minutes ago, which is like, we gotta get back to the basics of selling because that is true. When
mhm,
people get into the dealership now,
mhm,
we've got to get our sales teams back to knowing how to overcome price objections,
mhm,
overcome trade objections, explain to them the spread and the difference in why you can only give them this for their car, even though one of the new form or hybrid retailers out there offered them $1,500 over KBB instant cash offer.
mhm,
And those conversations, consumers want to be educated and they
mhm,
will listen, and being able to overcome those actually builds trust and differentiation in your experience. And so
mhm,
I think that even though we are saying that that you let them do all these steps and let them be self-guided, but your sales teams have to be bought in that the e-commerce arm of your business, the virtual lot, all the things they're doing digitally, it is not at all in competition because they still want to have that partnership and relationship with you in most the majority of cases, at the end of the day, the dealership is going to have a place in that. We heard that loud and clear in the study.
Mhm.
But when they get there, it has to be an assisted,
Mhm.
supported,
Seamless.
educated, data driven
Mhm.
journey and conversation. You got it.
I see what you're saying, and I really do hear you loud and clear. I think it's important for our audience to remember this. We know these things. Sometimes we're not acting fast enough on these things. It's turbocharged time now. You got to know your product. You got to know your snapbacks for every objection, and you have to be really coaching and mentoring on those
Mhm.
snapbacks on a daily because they continuously change, particularly the trade. We know that's one of the biggest concerns and pushbacks for customers. They've done their online research. They've collected their appraisals. These are estimates. A lot of times they get an accurate in store, but I think you have to be mindful of what people are asking you for, is what you said. And
Yes.
yeah, it's all demos, know your product, walk arounds. All these things are important at the
Mhm.
customer experience and making sure they get the full package. Everybody wants the full experience today.
They do. They sure do.
Mm. So, is there anything that I'm missing that we didn't uncover that was in that study that's imperative to share as we really start to let it all sink in here? This conversation and these pieces to putting together the 2024 and beyond vibes.
You know, we didn't quite get to marketing and audience activation.
Okay.
One of the other big takeaways from the study, and we
Mhm.
see cross shopping is at an all-time high.
Okay.
And so, I think that is a big one. That it's just an opportunity for our clients, like that efficiency that we talked about. That comes back to making sure that you are partnered with the right companies and vendors and
Mhm.
consultants like Jen, to measure everything that you're doing and to make sure that every dollar and every minute that you and your teams are spending is going to something that is measurable and that is going to activate audience that is in market to purchase today with relevant content, landing them back in the right place. So I think it just let's stay laser focused on consumer experience. And then
Mhm.
the other piece that we didn't hit, which is a little separate from the consumer journey study, but I think just as important, is our R from our acronym, which are revenue streams.
Okay.
It all kind of sums it up and comes together there. But our clients are incredibly focused on variable ops revenue right now, but
Yes.
they have to be thinking about lifetime value. We talk about it all the time. You talk about it. You're passionate about that side of the business as much as
Very
I am.
much.
But the total addressable market for our clients today, as distance retailing grows, as e-commerce grows, spending the right percentage of your marketing dollars to re-engage consumers to get them into your service drive is
Mhm.
just as important for your variable ops business as it is for your fixed ops business, one of those most stable revenue streams. And we even saw that in the study. Consumers like to do business with who they've been doing business with. We know it's your best at bat for quality trade-ins. We know it's one of your best at bats for profitable front end of the house deals. So I would just say, keep that finger on the pulse of all of the revenue streams in your business and make sure that every one of them is moving in the right direction from a market share perspective.
Are there very specific strategies that you could share with us in those and this on this guideline here that you just mentioned that could help us do better? Because for me, immediately I start thinking about service to sales. I start thinking about how we stay connected with customers after the sale. I start thinking about how we go into the database and we look for opportunities to stay connected with people at the same time maintain loyalty, because a lot of times it's not proactive outreach. A lot of time it's just we're waiting for them.
Yes. Marketing 101. I always say, you either have to be the one that they think of when the time is right for them,
Yeah.
or you got to be putting your message in the right place so that they run into you when the
Mhm.
time is right for them. They had no idea that you even existed. Like everything that you do is in one of those two categories. And so I am going to kind of come back to that fixed ops side where,
Mhm.
we know it's half or more of your overall profitability. That is tipped a little bit just because front end profits were so big during COVID. But as we see margin compression and rates
We see
continue,
it.
and yeah, that's right. And we start to see that shortage of
Mhm,
lease turn-ins, a
mhm,
bigger supply and demand imbalance again on the used car side. But
mhm.
we'll see people, they're going to hold on to cars longer. We're getting ready to enter a negative equity cycle.
Yes, we're
um,
there.
that's we're there, but we are just
We're
starting.
just starting.
What that is going to look like. And so that means when you're thinking about revenue streams, being able to keep the consumer attached to you for service, sales, parts, maintenance, recall, warranty, etc., is more
Mhm,
important than it will have ever been. They're going to be holding cars longer. They're upside down. We're even going to see a new segment of like involuntary repos, that we're
mhm,
going to have to build processes around that we have never seen at the volume that we expect that we'll see it. But when you think about revenue streams, that means knowing if 35% of your bottom line profit or 55% of your bottom line profit is coming from your fixed ops side of your business, why is it 5% of your focus and 10% of your budget? You've got to start to make those things align. That's that fierce measurement. It is understanding where it's coming from,
mhm.
where you are today, what piece of your market share you own, and how you are going to move the needle. And so I would just say, focus on aligning the dollars and aligning the audience activation to things that you can actually sink your teeth into and measure and understand ROI on. Because, like, we've gotten into this really bad habit as an industry of looking at things like a cost per lead, a cost per
Right.
click to my website. Well, any of us know I can flip a switch and I can drive 100,000 clicks to a 2011 Toyota 4Runner with 27,000 miles on it, like this.
Mhm,
That those leads, if they're never going to close, um,
mhm.
they don't matter. And so I think we've got to go one click deeper to find the efficiencies and to really understand ROI and to allocate our budgets accordingly.
Can you make a recommendation on just one thing that we could do?
Yes. So I would say allocate more of your marketing dollars to the fixed ops side of your business.
Got it.
Find people that are in market today trying to service, trying to schedule, because they do. They want to take as many steps of the ownership journey online as they
Mhm,
do the purchase journey.
mhm,
Second piece of advice would be throw cost per lead out the window. There
mhm,
are some brilliant business models out there that have built beautiful, profitable entire businesses lead slinging. And that is bad for dealers. Every minute that working a duplicate lead that's been sent to 10 dealerships costs you, is it's bad business. And so
mhm,
you don't get efficiency out of it. So understand ROI. We've had a blind spot from a marketing perspective in automotive since day one, and we've done our best to use CRMs, which aren't measurement tools. And there is technology out there now that matches online anonymous consumer activity to actual vehicle transactions.
mhm,
Spend a little bit of money to have the right data aggregators and the right data partnerships so that you can connect all those dots and hold your vendors and partners accountable to ROI, not to a cost per lead, not to a cost per click, because it's okay. You don't expect a Facebook direct marketing or direct response click to have the same value as a click from your OEM website. Um,
mhm,
they're not all created the same, so don't try
mm.
to measure them all the same way.
Okay. Okay. So you've got some great recommendations here. Um, even a little best practice. Did I miss anything that you feel would be so helpful for our listeners?
So I would say get your staff
Mhm,
on board with where you are today and where you are going. Change is so hard, and they have, I mean, from everybody that interacts with your customers and your inventory. It sounds silly to say, but all the way down to
mhm.
your reconditioning, your service technicians, your BDC staff, your receptionists, but for sure your floor salespeople and your desk managers that are the ones that are bridging the gap
Yes.
with your tools and your technology from the
Mhm,
old way to the new way.
mhm,
They have to know why they're doing it, because you can spend all the money in the world on the right marketing and the right product products and the right relationships from vendors and data aggregators. But if your sales teams don't understand the role
That
that
is
they play
exactly,
and
and
that
what to
they are
say.
bought in and
Mhm,
adopted on these things,
mhm,
you will never find those efficiencies and that kind of maximum profitability from any of those. So I would just say bring your staff along with you,
mm.
and let them be part of kind of the change curve as you rebrand how you're going to do business and how you're going to meet consumers where they are.
Ooh, it's a shakeup over here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, change is hard for people. This is why I really like to have these conversations because, I mean, there's one thing I've had to change personally in my life over the years is to embrace change, love change, look for change, call for it because it's the way to stay relevant, to stand
Yes.
apart from your
Yeah.
competitors, and it's fierce now. Oh, not the way
Fierce.
you mentioned it, but you know.
Well, this industry is the competition, the landscape.
Yeah.
We look at some of the stats on like the some of the larger and publicly traded organizations out there in automotive. And when you look at market share, some of those large groups are losing because they're not nimble and they're not moving towards the future and they're not shaking it up and they don't have their running shoes on and they're not driving change and they're not updating their processes and they're not
Mm,
measuring the new way. And these things matter.
you're preaching to the choir, sis. Let me tell you.
Yes, yes,
Uh,
I know it.
But I know I see it and I see the
Yeah,
struggle, especially with
yeah,
legacy thinkers.
mhm,
I love to see, people willing to try to something new. Just I
yeah,
don't even care if it's a text message in their sales process
that's
or
right.
deleting this
Baby
auto sales
steps.
process and
Yeah,
selling more brand value versus
mhm,
have you bought yet? Are you ready to buy? Are you ready to take? It's like nobody likes that anymore.
no,
You got
no,
to switch the whole game up. And I really, really love that you said we cannot go back because that's what everybody keeps saying. Oh, it's back to pre-COVID. No, it ain't. It's new
no,
times.
yeah, yeah,
And in fact, a
it
lot of
is.
the things that did work pre-COVID, it ain't gonna work today.
Mm-mm.
But the core fundamentals of knowing your product and your inventory and your tools,
Mhm.
and now being open to information that you've collected and you're sharing, we need to be eyes wide open, really listening, even if we think we know it all. We don't. Otherwise, we wouldn't be seeing these surveys the way that they are and
Right.
consumers sharing likes, dislikes, and at the same time, we have to listen and react and try something new. I always love the A/B strategy in marketing. I say that's what we got to
Yeah.
do for sales too, do for everything, service, everything. Your
That's right.
how do you know?
Test and iterate on everything that you do,
Mm,
and none of these new transformative expectations that consumers have, they don't have to be a light switch. Like, you don't have to overhaul your entire business. You can start taking little tiny incremental steps towards the future, and that's enough. That's enough to stay
that was the
relevant where
first
you are
step.
today. That's right.
Fierce. um, Well, I want to thank you for your time, and before we got started, listeners, there was something that Jade wanted to offer everyone that's listening. Some free, I love some free. So
Yeah.
tell us about the complete profit picture and how our listeners could access some free training from you.
Yes, Jen, we love your listeners. And so we did want to throw that out there. We are releasing a new learning series, small, bite sized brilliance for kind of tying that whole picture together. A lot of the things that we discussed today. And so your
Mhm.
listeners can find out more by visiting coxautoinc.com/the complete profit picture. Short snippets, a few sessions of free learning of how to start implementing and taking real action against some of the things we've talked about today.
Excellent. I'll put it in the show notes.
Thank you, Jen. Pleasure to be
Well,
with you.
yes, thank you so much for your time, your expertise, everything. Great. Thank you so much. If you like these episodes and my sales game techniques, you should snatch up our latest dealer education program I'm hosting. It's called Jen's Remote Classes, and it's a 1-hour, once-a-week class with me alongside other dealerships all pursuing the same end game to achieve top 10% status in your dealership. For more info, hit me up. All my contact info's in the show notes. I want to hear from you. And follow Dealer Talk with Jen Suzuki right now to get notified when episodes like this one drop. This is Jen on the podcast Dealer Talk with Jen Suzuki. See ya.